Hello and welcome to the State of the Race, the presidential election as of November the 1st. My name is John Toffelmeyer. We've got a lot to talk about today. There's some interesting polls that have come out that are suggesting the race might be tightening in some parts of the swing states. We've got some interesting numbers that are coming out of other swing states that are saying Trump is looking very strong. It's a little bit of a mix. I'm also going to add Florida to get a little bit of a perspective on that state. So with that in mind, we've got a lot to go through. Let's get started. And as of November the 1st, it still is very tight. I've got Trump up by 0.2 of a percentage point in the popular vote. Not much change. We only had one national poll that came out, major national poll that came out in the last 24 hours, a TIPP poll. That one shows Trump up by about 0.5 of a percent nationally. It's a pretty good poll. So it's had a pretty good track record the last two cycles. So I take that seriously, but very little change in the popular vote. I still have Trump ahead 312, 226. But if you follow Real Clear Politics, they show that Wisconsin and Michigan are leaning towards Harris now. I don't buy that, but I think it's at least based on the polling that it is close. So let's go over these numbers in the swing states, and we've got Michigan and Wisconsin, the closest at really 0.3 of a percent. It's basically at a coin flip stage. It's looking pretty intense in these states, if we can believe these numbers, but I think that's reasonable. I've got Nevada at 1.3 percentage point lead. I think I'm going to show you, I think it's a lot larger. And this state may not be in play, but at least that's what the polls are saying. Pennsylvania, 1.4%. We've got early voting figures from there, but nothing decisive there. We've got North Carolina, 1.8 percentage point lead according to the polling. The early voting is real looks like it's real tight, and we're going to go over those numbers a little bit later. And then finally, we've got Arizona 2.5, Georgia 2.7. We're going to talk about Arizona a little bit later. Georgia, I'm not going to talk about because I don't have good numbers out of there, but I think people are starting to think that Georgia is going to go for Trump. I think people are expecting that the expectation now is that Georgia is going to go for Trump. So with that in mind, let's turn to the most important state right now of the swing states in which we have early voting, and that's Nevada. And I'm going to compare. The in-person voting now ended. It ended on today, Friday, the 1st of November. Big turnout the last day. It blew off the turnout from 4 years ago. And Democratic turnout was up. That was really encouraging, but so was Republican turnout. So Republican turnout grew, Democratic turnout grew. At the end, the total votes cast was almost the same as 4 years ago, within a couple thousand. So now we can make a real clear comparison. I've got that here in this table, with 2020, 4 years ago, and this time around, and these are final numbers. So this is now baked in for this election. So 4 years ago, 165,000 Democratic votes were cast in person. This time, 150,000. Republican virtually the same, about 250,000. And the independent, it up 15,000. Big increase in independents, and that might be making it a little bit harder to call this state. That's been what's really been an interesting part of the story the last couple of days. The independent vote is really increasing. So the question is, who are these people? And that's the question that we have to try to figure out and get a view on in order to understand what might happen in this state. So with that, let's turn to the total, including the mail voting total, because there's a lot of mail votes too. And overall, the Republicans have about a 50,000 vote lead in all of votes cast so far, and it's about just under 5 percentage point lead. The Democratic share has been shrinking. The Republican share has been falling slightly. The other independent has been surging the last few days. It went up from 25 up to now 28%. So this, who these people are and how they're going to vote, is the most important question that we have in this state in this election. My numbers, based on eight polls in this state, suggest that Harris is leading independents by 6 percentage points, 50 to 44. Now, the interesting thing here is that every one of these polls showed Trump winning independents. So let's keep that in mind. That's an important thing to remember as to what might be happening. So keep that in mind. And that's going to become, in just a moment, we're going to see why. But if we take that number, if we take that into consideration and what's going on between Democrat and Republican voters, how likely each one of those groups are, we can come up with a number. And here's what I think is the actual voting totals, my estimation, and it is that Trump is up by 68,000 votes, and his share, it's not changing very much, and the lead continues to grow. So if you believe, as I believe, that Trump is leading by 6 percentage points, then he has about a 68,000 vote lead. That's pretty big. And let's just go down the regional, because to understand this state, you have to think about the regions, how they break down. The most important, Clark County, that's the urban, that's Las Vegas. Typically, the Democrats roll up a big margin in Clark County, Washoe County, and Carson City. That's Reno and Carson City. Typically, Republicans have small lead there. And then if this race is going to be close, the Republicans win, it's because in the rural part of the state, they roll up big numbers. Well, you could see at least a big lead. That's the important thing. It's not a lot of votes, but they're so heavily Republican that that's where, if they're going to make up, if the Republicans carry the state, it's because they make up the Clark County. But Trump is leading. My numbers have Trump leading in Clark County so far. That's devastating for the Democrats if that's true. I think in the end, from now on, it's just going to be mail votes before Election Day. And that's going to be most of the remaining votes that are going to be cast. It's probably going to be enough to put Harris in the lead in Clark County. But my expectation is that on the day of the election, there's going to be more votes that are going to come out here. It's going to increase on the day of the election. I think it's going to fall short. I think it's going to fall short. But let me discuss, because there's a local observer there with a good reputation. I want to talk about his view of the state. It's an observer named John Ralston. He's a journalist with about 15 years of experience in the state. He worked for a major newspaper. He now writes his own. He's now independent, and he has a blog, and you can get that down here. Let me point that out here. It's right there. It's the Nevada Independent. Got a pretty good blog. Very knowledgeable. You can see he's very knowledgeable, but he's also quite partisan. He's quite partisan Democrat, and he really wants Kamala Harris to carry the state. And so his blog, he's noting that what's going on with these numbers. He's trying to put the view that the independents, that Harris is carrying the independents. Now here, the extreme view, he was suggesting she could carry it with 10%. By a 10% spread, a percentage point spread in the independents. And with that, his thought was, and this was a couple days ago, that with numbers like this, then with the mail-in vote from Clark County between now and Election Day, that could offset the rural vote, the rural in-person vote on Election Day. The last couple of days, he's kind of backed off on this and said, well, maybe that she'll carry by 5%, and he goes through this very complicated analysis to say, well, she might squeak out a victory. But let me just read something that he says. I repeat that he wrote in his blog the day before yesterday. He says, I repeat, It is not worth modeling Trump winning Indies, independent voters, because if he does, all of this is moot and he will easily win the state. As I'm saying, and I've got Trump up by 6 points. That's my expectation based on the polling. But he goes on, he says, I don't think a lot of people believe Trump winning Indies will happen. But if it does, I've wasted my time putting all this stuff together. Well, it's kind of interesting, and he really does spend a lot of time on it. What's the interesting thing he says there, not a lot of people think that he's going, but all the polls say that. So, it maybe it's just not dealing with it well. I don't know. But go look if you're really interested in this and to want a deeper view on this, go check his blog out to see if, a counter to my view, to see if you think it might be different. But I think he's extreme, and I think that Trump is in a good position to carry this state. So let's now move on to Arizona. In-person and mail voting totals as of November the 1st, solid lead for the Republicans, about 8 percentage points, 176,000 votes. But there is more excuse me. There's more cross-party voting in this state, and I think there's more that's going from the Republicans to Kamala Harris than from Democrats to Donald Trump. But my view is that Harris is leading the independents, and that's a meta poll from 7 polls that she's got a 2-point lead among independents in the state. There are lots of independents, but putting all that together, I think even in spite of that she's leading independents, I think that Trump is up 115,000 votes so far, and about a 5.3% percentage spread. I think it's a pretty big lead. I'm not as certain about this state as Nevada, but I think Trump is in pretty solid. I think he's in a pretty solid place. I think we'll know if another couple of days, if these numbers continue to hold up, and we're getting more votes every day, numbers continue to hold up. That's a big enough chunk of the state that may be able to call this by election day. So now let's move on to North Carolina, because I'll tell you how hard it's going to be to figure this out. And just look at these numbers. These are actual votes that have been cast so far, in person and mail. It's 33, 33, 33, almost out. And huge independent vote here, huge, absolutely huge. I have Harris leading independents by 2 points, and that's a meta poll from 5 polls. So I've used 5 polls to make that estimation. Hope they come out with some more so I can perhaps make those numbers more robust. But that's what I have now. You can see the Republicans about 50,000 votes up. Harris slight lead here. So you can see your expectation will be roughly, the 50,000, and it's about just under like 48,000 vote lead. But I think it's real fuzzy. It's real fuzzy. This is going to be, you're going to want to watch this. This is one of the states you're going to want to watch because it could be intense. As I say, she's probably going to have to win this. She's going to absolutely have to win this. She's going to hold the blue wall, and she's got to carry this state to have a chance. So this is her chance. It's got to be in this state. She's got to win this state. So real tight. There's no way that I can make a call at this state at this point. Next, let's turn to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, we've got this is through yesterday. Now, there's a lot less, and it's all mail-in. They don't have in person. there's still not a big, I think there's going to be maybe 35 to 40% of the total vote is going to be cast by mail. It's still a state with a lot of tradition of in-person voting. So these numbers are really not going to tell us what's going to happen. But we want to pay attention to it because these numbers are going to tell us on election night the kind of spread that the lead that Trump is going to have to gain in the day of voting to offset the early mail-in vote that happened before the election. And you can see it's about almost a 400,000 vote lead, big percentage point lead. I've got Trump 47-46 leading independents. I think there's like 6 polls. I didn't put that down, but I think it's about 6 polls. But it's basically, I think it's a wash. And that adds up so far to about 333,000 votes. So 333,000 vote lead for Harris from the early voting. The importance of this again is this is what Trump is going to have to overcome on election night to overcome this early vote margin. So what you're going to want to watch on election night, the reason why you want is to keep track of, remember this number, the number that comes out of this, and as election night comes, what kind of a lead does Trump build in Pennsylvania, and to see whether he can hold that so that when these mail-in vote, they start actually counting and reporting those, you'll have an idea of how much of a margin that is. If Trump's ahead 300,000 going into the counting of this, he might lose. If he's 500,000, he's probably going to win. So that's kind of what to expect there. So that's why we're going to want to watch this number for the next couple of days. I'm going to talk about the Nebraska 2nd Congressional District. This very tight. It looks a little bit tight, but definitely Democrats are leading. It's 4,000 votes, and Harris is leading the independents so far. And this works out to about an 8,000 vote lead, about 7 percentage points. Some polling is showing a double-digit lead for Harris. I don't think that's going to happen here. My expectation, she's still going to carry this, but I think I would say it's leaning towards Harris. It's leaning. If we get closer to election day, I may be able to call this, but I'd say this is most likely she's going to carry. It's one electoral college vote, but it does, every vote might matter here. Finally, I'm going to talk about Florida, not because it's in play, but it tells us some real interesting stuff that might be going on in this election. It's kind of hard to read overall, but this might be telling us some stuff. And the first thing you see, it's a huge Republican lead in terms of total votes cast. Absolutely huge. I mean, it's 840,000 vote lead. It's like 11.6 percentage point spread. Gigantic. So there's really no question that that Trump is going to carry this. Now, from 4 polls, my call is that Harris leads the independents by 51-47. So with that in mind, this 23%, and when we take all those numbers, we get this number. It's a 10 percentage point margin, and I think Trump is up by 730,000 votes right now. I mean, this is not even. It's over. So the question is, how big of a margin is it going to be? And this is 10 points, 10 percentage points. Now, 8 years ago, this was like 1 percentage point. 4 years ago, people were surprised on election day because it was about 3.5, 3.6 for Trump. And that was because of a surge of Hispanic vote that was a bit unexpected. Now it's 10%. And I think the reason is a lot of it is Hispanic vote. That Hispanic vote is shifting towards Republicans, shifting towards Donald Trump. So, and this is something that's may play out throughout the country. So this is something we want to think about, that the Democratic margin among Hispanics is probably going to shrink. and this may play an important role. Now, the other thing is that 10 percentage point, I have Trump up. The polls roughly about 7 to 8%, 7 to 8 percentage point lead. I have him up by 10. It could be more by election day. He could really, really blow this state out. And so it looks like he's kind of outperforming in Florida. Looks like he's outperforming in Arizona a little bit. He definitely looks like he's outperforming in Nevada. And it's usually by 2, 3 percentage points. Now, that may sound like it's a familiar number, and it is. We've seen that in the past. The question is, though, is that going to translate nationally? I don't know. There's a lot of Hispanic vote here in Florida, Arizona, Nevada. It could be that. That could be playing a role. He's outperforming here, but it might not be happening elsewhere because there's other things going on, and I'm going to be talking some more about that tomorrow. So that's where we are. The state of the race. It's getting really intense. We're coming up to the end. We've just got a few more days, the weekend, and then Monday, and then election day. So it's almost here now. So if you like this content, please like and share because this is an analysis you're probably not going to get anywhere else. So thanks for watching to the end. We'll see you soon. I'm going to be back tomorrow with an update. Talk to you later. Bye.